Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I am your host, Jake Lewitt, and we are continuing our expedition through Deep Blue Sea adjacent films. Normally on this show we would be covering the Deep Blue Sea trilogy, as it is at the moment, chapter by chapter. We've done all of those. Now we're looking at Deep Blue Sea adjacent films I'm less familiar with, whilst my co-host Mark is on paternity leave. Mark was, of course, on last week's show on The Covenant, the Rennie Harlan directed film The Covenant. But he is going to be coming back. We didn't really go on about it last week because his time was limited. But he's going to be on now and then when he's available, when the film takes his interest, which isn't the case this week. It's just me and a guest. But what are we talking about this week? This week we're talking about The Reef. It's a 2010 Australian film. It is not a 2006 animated South Korean film featuring the voices of Freddie Prinze Jr., Evan Rachel Wood, Rob Schneider, Andy Dick, John Rhys Davies, Ollie Ermey, and a bunch of other people. No, it is not that one. Ignore that one. It is the 2010 Australian film directed by Andrew Traucki and starring Damien Walsh-Howling, Guyton Grantley, Adrian Pickering, Zoe Naylor, Kieran Darcy-Smith, Mark Simpson, and no one else. There are 6 people in this cast. One of them has maybe 2 lines, and then there's 5 of them. This tells the story of these 5 people who go on a little holiday on a little boat, little yacht. Doesn't go well. The yacht gets scuppered, they get stranded, and they've got to try and work out what to do from there. And because it's TBC adjacent, there are sharks involved. Now, this was a first time watch for me, so I need somebody who is more familiar with the film, someone who likes the film, who wants to talk about the film. So, joining us for the first time since, I want to say like chapter 5 or 6 from Deep Blue Sea, we talked about Susan's birthday party, returning guest from Movies and Tea, Game Warp podcast, and Tranquil Dreams, it's Kim Lowe. Kim, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's been a long time since you were on.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, shark films are something I really like, so you asked me to do a shark film, I'm like, yeah, I'm down for it, you know.
Excellent, glad to hear it. So, when it comes to horror films or shark films, this one, The Reef, is allegedly based on a true story in part. Do you prefer your horror to be like truthful, to be realistic, or do you prefer the more Deep Blue Sea-esque, let's chuck some sci-fi fantasy at this kind of thing?
I mean, when I watched this the first time, I didn't really know it was based on anything, and it was like, you know, there was 5 other people in the blogosphere who'd seen it, basically. So, I don't know if that amount has actually gone up since then, but, you know, I always like to talk about it. I mean, I don't really mind whether it's based on real or not. I think that if a film is well executed, especially a shark movie, it's, you know, it gives you a bit of tension, like, oh, what's going to happen type of thing. Because I feel like, you know, like shark movies at this point with Asylum and everything, it's a bit, you know, it's a bit saturated also.
You could say, yeah, there are quite a lot of shark films ranging from the ones with a large budget, like The Meg, down to something we covered a couple of weeks back, Santa Jaws, which is very much a low-budget film. It was very difficult to track down for me, but it came with a box set of a bunch of other very small-budget films. I think it's quite easy to make a shark film. You just don't put a lot of shark in it, I guess. Or you do what The Reef does, and you use actual shark footage, which I'm sure we'll get into. So, what is it about The Reef that you like? Why, when I reached out to you and said, do you want to talk about The Reef, you're like, yes. Why did you say yes?
I think it's just because I feel like not enough people talk about this one. And while I think that over repeat watches, like this is the 3rd time I've rewatched it to be on this show, I think every single time I start seeing a little bit more flaws with it. The first time I watched it, I remembered, like, I still really appreciate how it's one of those shark films that you feel like the shark isn't in your face type of thing. They kind of play with what's not there, the less is more. I really, really like that. And I really like, I think as I watch more horror in general, that's something that I really appreciate more, rather than like, you know, everything is happening in your face all the time, like a huge soundtrack or paired with like lots of noises and jump scares and all of that sort of stuff. But I think that The Reef in general takes that with very like they don't do all that. They kind of lower it down to really just being a film where it builds psychologically on just a few people that are at sea. They're trying to find an island, and then they're starting to kind of question, oh, is there a shark there? Is there, what's in the waters? What will we find? And then they play a lot with that sort of thing. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you feel that way, but like when I go into a pool and I go to a deep end, that's how I sometimes feel. Like, oh, it's so dark underneath. And then you start thinking, after you've watched a few shark films, it's like, oh, is there a shark? But it's a pool. It's not going to have a shark. But you kind of have that subconsciously in your mind.
I mean, there are shark films out there that feature sharks in pools. If you haven't watched Ghost Shark, I would recommend it, which that features a shark that is killed, and the ghost of it can inhabit any body of water. So, yes, it's in a swimming pool, but also it's in a cup of tea. So it's a very silly film, but it's very enjoyable. But no, I don't have that fear of getting into swimming pools. I've never really been scared that much by a shark film, I guess. I suppose being in the UK, we don't really have a lot of sharks here. So it's not, I don't know if you have many in Canada.
No. We have like whales and dolphins and stuff, not really sharks.
So I've never really been anywhere where sharks have been a problem. I mean, I've been to Florida, but whenever I was there was never any signs saying, danger, there might be sharks here. So it's never really been a real world concern for me. I don't see myself getting into the kind of scenario that they get into in this film. It's not, I don't know anyone with a small boat that's going to take me out on a middle of nowhere boating expedition.
Yeah, and probably most people aren't going to be like, yeah, huge adventurers, and be like, yeah, we're going to go sail across the ocean on a little yacht, Like, I don't know. I don't have that thought, at least. So.
Yeah. So I'm kind of the opposite when it comes to, I prefer my horror or action films to be less realistic. So I watched this film twice in preparation for the podcast today. The first time I watched it, I wasn't that on board with it, because I kind of found it was sticking too much to what I assumed was the true story. The story this is based on is actually quite different from what actually happened. We'll get into that a little bit later, I think. But so I thought they were just kind of tied to this. This is the real events that happened, so we have to do it exactly as it was. So it was pretty uneventful, in my opinion. For like an hour and a half film, there's not a lot. Like the final 2/3 of it is all very similar. Of they're just kind of out in the water swimming, and it's tense, but it's mainly kind of one thing happens to them several times. Where it's like, okay, a shark comes along, one of you might die, the shark might go away, and then that's it, and repeat again in a few minutes' time. But then the second time around, I did appreciate it more because I knew what I was getting into, I knew how it played out, and I kind of noticed a few other things to appreciate going along. So. I think where you kind of liked it less going on, I liked it more going in. So maybe we'll meet in the middle somewhere. Good. Okay. So let's kind of set out the plot and the characters here. So we've got 5 main characters. I'm using characters loosely. There's not a lot of depth to pretty much any of these guys. We have our main hero, Luke, played by Damien Walsh-Howling. None of these actors have appeared in anything I've seen before, and given that they're all 6 are Australian actors. Only one of them has appeared in either Home and Away or Neighbours, which I was shocked by. Because that's normally where every Australian actor kind of cuts their teeth, as far as I was concerned. But anyway, so he's the main guy. He, for a living, just pilots boats around the world. He delivers boats to people. That's a job. So if you like doing that kind of thing, great. That sounds wonderful. I'm very happy for him. He's meeting up with his friend Matt, Guyton Grantley, Matt's girlfriend or wife, I wasn't sure, Susie, and Matt's sister Kate, who's also Luke's ex-girlfriend, played by Zoe Naylor, and then we have Warren, who is Luke's kind of crewman for the first time. That's our 5 people. Other than like Warren being a bit scared of water because he's seen what's in there, and Luke and Kate having kind of a strange relationship, I didn't really get a lot from these guys at all. There's not a lot of character going on here.
Oh no, the characters are as thin as they come. They're I mean, there's not a lot here. There's a lot of like panicking, and that's about it. Everybody panics. Especially Susie panics a lot.
She does, and Kate, Zoe Naylor, has a particularly terrified face where her eyes just kind of bug out and her mouth kind of gets set into a grimace, and she stays like that for a little while. I'm not saying the acting's bad. It's just the face that she makes I found more comical than terrifying. Because she makes it several times. So we get these paper-thin relationships and characters established early on. There was one, like, when Kate and Luke first kind of meet, they were in a relationship. She wanted some space, so they gave some space, and now she's just come back for what she says, she's just come back for a vacation, but they do kiss and make up a little bit, and she also brings him a gift of a large sausage wrapped up, which is never explained, never comes back. There's some kind of in-joke between the two of them that we don't really get let into. And I thought, is that going to be like the only food they have to survive on is this sausage somehow? But no, it's just that one scene and then that's it, we're gone. Which was a shame, I thought. But we have some not great dialogue between them all, where as they're like, they first head off to this little island. Actually, no, before they even set out, they're at the kind of bait shop, boat place, and there's all these shark jaws on the walls. And Shane, the only other cast member, says to Kate that you're more likely not to worry, because all the sharks came from the water around. Not to worry, you're more likely to die from a bee sting than a shark. Big problem with that line, because not in the water, not on a boat. There, the shark deaths. To be fair, yes, there are on average 10 shark deaths per year. And just in the UK, on average, just in the US, I should say, 62 deaths from bee stings a year. So a lot more deaths from bees than sharks, granted. But again, not when you're in the shark's habitat. Not when you're out in the middle of the ocean. There, be concerned about sharks. This guy, terrible. Hated him.
I just find it really crazy when you think about dialogue like that, right? I mean, especially since, I don't know if you've seen the Netflix special for Michael McIntyre.
No.
And he had a, like, his stand-up comedy, he had a bit about the Australian shark situation. And that's exactly, he was saying the same thing about how, you don't get into the water, people keep getting into the water. That's why they die.
Yes. It's very easy not to die by shark. Just stay away from them. They can't.
And it's like, oh, they appeared out of nowhere. Well, no, they didn't appear out of nowhere. You're in their habitat. Of course they're there,
Which, that's a kind of a problem that I have with this film, and that there's no, because the characters are so thin, there's no, like, evil human to root against. It's the sharks are the villains, but they're just doing their thing. These people dropped in the water. These people are food. The shark's gonna eat them. It's just kind of nature. I needed someone to, here's the moustache-twirling Dick Dastardly type who, like, pushed them in the water and is chumming the water around them to bring the sharks. I needed someone to root against. I needed a Dr. Susan McAllister as the film's
right.
villain. I do enjoy a good villain, and sharks acting on their nature isn't enough of a villain for me. It's the Jurassic Park thing. People always say that the dinosaurs are the villains of Jurassic Park. They're not. Dennis Nedry's the villain of Jurassic Park. The dinosaurs are just, surviving. They're just out there being dinosaurs. Anyway.
Fair point. I agree. I definitely agree. I think it also has to do with, when you watch so many shark movies, it's hard to be so, I think, for me, I kind of, like, really clear my mind when I watch a creature feature. I just kind of accept it for what it is. Because if you think too much, I think, about any type of creature feature, you kind of start seeing a lot of things that you're like, well, a lot of movies are like that. It's kind of like, well, if you didn't do this, you wouldn't be in this situation, like the logical thing. And it's how I feel about, like, I had a really good example I have recently is my whole revelation against romantic comedies last year and why I don't watch them anymore. I don't know if it's because I've gotten older or something, but I find them very frustrating to watch because anything can be solved with communication, and most of the time that's the bottom line of why things end up in conflict.
Yeah, that's most romantic comedies, most sitcom episodes. Exactly. Okay, you've done something wrong, explain it.